Hi there, welcome or welcome back to the Books for Us. Today we are talking about all the books I read in 2024, and I read 87 books this year, which is massive to me. And I am going to run through these starting at the bottom, so the books that I ranked the lowest, and then I am working up to my 5-star reads of the year. Now, there's only one book that I actually gave 1 star this year, and I'm a bit afraid to tell you which one it is, but it is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I know there are a lot of fans out there of these series, but I really did not like Powerless at all. I didn't like the content because it was all cliche. It was a definite rip-off of a lot of other books, and it was ripped off very badly. I also didn't like the language. It has a lot of repetition, a lot of sentences that return in each chapter, and the chapters are quite short. So this really did nothing for me at all. Moving on to my 1.5-star reads of the year, I actually followed up and read Powerful by Lauren Roberts because I already bought it. I gave this one 1.5 star just because there were a bit less of those repetitions, just a bit. And I thought that even slight improvement should be rewarded in a way. Also with 1.5 stars then is Reckless by Lauren Roberts. I'm so sorry. And I read this one because I was reading it for one of my very first videos on this channel. And I read it because I wanted to annotate all the repetitions in these books. And because of that, I think I gave it 1.5 star because I had a little more to do than in the first book, although this book was very boring. It is just someone picking up someone else and then dragging them along for like 300 pages. Also with 1.5 star reads, we have The Teacher by Frida McFadden. This is the first ever book that I've read by Frida McFadden. I know that she is also very popular. I'm going to give her a second chance with another book, but this one I didn't like at all. I didn't like the content matter. It is about this relationship between a student and her teacher, and it was just really bad. And I also didn't like the very cheap Poe references to Edgar Allan Poe, which were really badly done. And reading this book just felt like this is written by someone who has to publish like one book every 3 or 4 months and is very much searching for inspiration and has no idea whatsoever what a teacher does. So yeah, rant over. And then the last one, unfortunately, in 1.5 star, is A Stroke of the Pen, The Lost Stories by Terry Pratchett. I actually like Terry Pratchett, and I was looking forward to reading this, but these are his earliest stories, the ones that got published in newspapers before he started to write his novels and things like that. And you can very much feel that these stories weren't up to what he is capable of, or was capable of. I'm so sorry. So they very much feel like beginner material, and they didn't do anything for me in particular. Moving on to my 2-star reads, I have The Midnight Club by Christopher Pike. This one was very disappointing to me just because I actually expected something totally different from this one. It's actually a bit of a frame story with some other stories in there, but I had expected this one to be kind of creepy, and it totally wasn't, so that's that. Another 2-star for me is The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera. I know this one is highly appraised, but I felt it was very overworked, very much overdone, and I couldn't get into it. It just felt like the author was trying too hard to be intellectual, maybe. So it felt forced, and I sort of felt forced to finish this book. Another book that I'm really sad about that I had to give 2 stars is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. I was actually really looking forward to reading my very first Anne Patchett this year, but this one just didn't deliver. Nothing to do with the writing. I absolutely love the writing, and I am definitely reading another book by her in the upcoming year. So another second chance there. But this story didn't grab me. It was a bit dragging to read for me, and I do feel sad about that. So this is actually my biggest disappointment of the year. More 2-star reads are Not in Love by Ellie Hazelwood. This one was not giving me a very romantic story. This one was a lot of sex, and that's it. Then we have Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn Waugh. I tend to read some classics during the year, and this one was one that I was looking forward to once again. But I really didn't like the writing. It was very heavy-handed and kind of a drag to get through. And my last 2-star read is Garlic and Vampire by Brie Paulson. This is a comic book, but I thought it was going to be a bit more fun. It is very cute. The drawings are really, really cute, but the story is practically nil. So yeah, disappointed by this one. Moving on to 2.5 stars, and from here on out, all the books get a pass, so to say. The first one is The Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. I did like the writing, I liked the idea, I liked the characters, but she was not giving us enough in this novella. It feels like you got started in a novel and then the rest is just missing. So that was too bad. Next we have If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. This is a romantic story, but I didn't really get into it because at the beginning we have this part that is actually happening at the end, you know, when you go back in time and then you get a whole story towards this actual end scene. But because we got this information at the beginning, I felt kind of spoiled already. I felt like I already knew how it was going to end and I couldn't really get into the book anymore. So that was just too bad. Then we have Look in the Mirror by Catherine Stedman. This is a thriller with a really good setup about this mansion on a deserted island, and there is this really strange secret door. But then after that, it really didn't deliver for me. The things that were behind the secret door didn't feel worked out enough for me. So yeah, bit of a fail here. Next we have Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, which is the second book in the Emily Wilde series by Heather Fawcett. Now I also read the first one, which is apparently higher up, but the second one got me down a bit because there were some new characters introduced that I didn't really like. I felt they were very much stereotypical characters, and I liked the vibe of the first book because I think I actually put it up quite high. So I was looking forward to this one, and then this one was kind of a disappointment. In this one, I also missed a bit of the subtle romance that is going on between Emily Wilde and her co-worker. But a third book is coming out in this series, and I'm looking forward to reading that one, and hopefully it picks up again. Another 2.5 stars to Mary Higgins Clark's On the Street Where You Live. This one is a murder mystery, but it's a bit of an older one, and you could definitely feel that. It was kind of easy to see through what was going on, because I think it would have been a bit more original over 20 years ago than it was now. And the last one is poetry. It is The Orange by Wendy Cope. I was a huge fan of the poem The Orange by Wendy Cope, which is the first poem in this collection. But then it goes downhill from there. None of the other poems spoke to me, so it kind of feels like a one-trick pony. Moving on to the 3-star books, we have Father Christmas's Fake Beard by Terry Pratchett. Once again, this one I like better than the previous one because it was more cohesive. These are also short stories, but they are a lot more fun. And this one is fun to read when you want something light and easy around holidays, which was exactly when I read it. Then we have The Girl in the Locked Room by Mary Downing Hahn. This is a middle grade book. It was kind of good. I think as a child I would have enjoyed reading this one, but I feel that it could have had some more things going on than just a sort of one track that it was running. Next we have The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik, which is the second book in the Skullman series. Once again, book 1 and book 3 in this case are higher up than the second book. It is kind of the second book curse, I feel, that it is always a bit less interesting than the first one. Then we have the first episode of Freerun Beyond Journey's End, which is a manga. I read this one because it came recommended by Cassandra Lynn Reeds, and it's definitely not a bad manga. It is more interesting than other things that I have read, but it still kind of made it clear to me that I'm not much of a manga reader, so I'll be putting this one aside. Then there's Bunny by Mona Awad. While reading this one, I knew that this is a very special book. I can imagine that a lot of people actually really, really like this one. But it is written in a way that makes you feel like you never really know what is true and what isn't. It feels like you are in this fever dream, as it is often called. And I don't particularly like books like this because I want to know what is actually happening and what isn't, or if we have a part that is unclear, then at least at the end I want to reveal about what was true and what wasn't, and you don't get that in this book, and it's more frustrating to me than anything else. But having said that, it was definitely well written, and if you are into something like this, I would highly recommend it. Another second book curse is Killer Instinct, which is the second book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I really loved the whole series of the Naturals. I read all 4 of them this year, so all the other ones are higher up once again. It's just that this one fell a bit short compared to the others. Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I think I'm too old for this book. I'm just going to say that this one is about being in your 20s or your early 20s and finding yourself and your friendships and love and things like that. And you know, I've been there, so I thought I would be able to relate, but I really couldn't because it is written as if this person is drawing conclusions from it. And I feel too old because I have already drawn other conclusions or put things in different perspectives, so this wasn't a book for me. Now 2 more books that I am sad to say only got 3 stars this year. First of which is Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. I adore the Heartstopper series, just like the rest of the world, I think. But this one in particular was giving too little. Nothing much was happening. Not that much is happening in the other ones, but we have more of a story, more of a build-up. And this volume just feels like a filler until the next one. So yeah, sorry. And the last one is Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kwang. Now, Yellowface started off really well. It's about these 2 writer friends, and one of them dies and the other one steals her book to publish under her own name, and it was built up really well. I thought it was very interesting. I was enjoying it very much. But then the ending feels like it is written by a 15-year-old. It was just too harsh in comparison to how the rest of the book is written. It felt very much out of place. And it very much felt like the author herself didn't really know how she wanted to end the story. So that's where those 3 stars come from. Moving on to 3.5 stars. First we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I had expected more from this because it is hyped up a lot. I do like the premise of this very much. I like the idea of this contract between a girl and an evil spirit for her to live forever but not to be remembered. But I did have difficulty believing in the relationships in this book and the things that they are based on. And I also had some issues with the development of the main character. If she is living this long, I think she would be wiser than she actually is in this book. Then there is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, which is a book that you should have read if you are into haunted houses and into all those more scary stories. I did like it, but part of it also has the same issue that I had with Bunny, which is that you don't always know if something is true or not, or is actually happening or not. But it is very much a classic for its genre. The Maid by Nita Prose, a whodunit from the perspective of someone with autism. Interesting to read, but not the most interesting plot. A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I like the concept of living in your favorite book or book series, but I thought it could have been worked out better. Funny Story by Emily Henry. I have to read other Emily Henrys. This is my first one. And I have to say that romance for romance sake is not my favorite genre. So to me it feels like 3.5 stars is pretty good for this book. It is about these 2 people who are sort of forced to live together and then they fall in love with each other, and it's an easy summer read if you are looking for romance to read on the beach or in your garden if you're not a beach person. Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica, which is about the disappearance of a couple of people and then one of them returns and what happens there. It was a lot of fun to start this one and I had very high hopes, but the ending really disappointed me. There were a lot of things there that felt like they were forced to fit the narrative, and that just felt too bad. Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell, also about a disappearance. I felt a bit let down by this one because I read another Lisa Jewell, which I'll be getting to soon, and I had expected more. It feels like it could have done with a bit more inspiration, maybe, a bit more inventiveness than this one was giving. Next we have Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson, which is also one of the second book curses because this is the second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. This one I didn't like as much as the first one and the third one. And also here at the 3.5 stars is Killjoy by Holly Jackson, which is actually a novella in the same series, which was fun to read, but also wasn't giving me as much. Five Nights by Rachel Wolf, a murderer on a cruise ship and a really rich family, and an old friend that was invited along for the ride. It is very forgettable. I even have to think really hard how this one ended and who the murderer was. It kind of felt like a ripoff, reading this whole book and then finding out who did it in the end. So not something I would highly recommend. Next we have the complete Regency Fairy series by Olivia Atwater, which consists out of Half a Soul, 10,000 Stitches and Long Shadow. And in the book Half a Soul we also have an included novella, which is The Lord Sorcier. All of these are cozy fantasy set in the Regency era, and they are fun to read if you are into this sort of thing. But I felt like reading all three of these back to back was kind of tedious, and I sort of had to drag myself through it towards the end. Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. This was a fun read. It is more of a middle grade love story, but it was kind of cute. It is about fake dating, if that is your trope of choice. Then we have The Giver by Lois Lowry. I know this is a bit more of a classic in the dystopian genre. I enjoyed reading this one. It just felt a bit empty to me, but that is probably because I've read a lot of other more elaborate dystopian novels than this one. This one is middle grade as well. So that is why it got this rating. But I very much understand that this is a starter book for a lot of people to the dystopian genre. Next we have some more poetry. We have The Wild Iris by Louise Gluck. I enjoyed this one. It is mostly about gardening and flowers, but it is all symbolic for these different stages in life. So I enjoyed reading this one because I also felt that this one was put in the correct order. So it was a bit like listening to a music album and the correct song follows the correct song. It builds up to something. So yes. Then we have Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Once again, dystopian and a bit of a starter pack, so to say, for dystopian worlds. I liked the concept, I liked reading about the ideas, but at no point in this book did I feel connected to anyone. So I understand that this is part of the classics that you should have read in order to understand what is coming next. But on its own, it's not my favorite type of book. And the last one here is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This one is a modern day retelling of David Copperfield. It has been very popular the past year. I did enjoy parts of this. I did get invested in parts of this, but it felt too heavy at times and I wasn't always along for the ride. So parts of this felt like misery put on top of misery, put on top of more misery, but the writing was definitely worthwhile. Moving on to my 4-star reads, I'm starting off with Where Snow Angels Go by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a Christmassy children's book and I loved it a lot. I thought the idea of the snow angels was a very sweet one, and I loved drawings in this one as well. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong, a literary masterpiece, definitely worth reading because of the language, but it is very sad and it doesn't get any better, be warned. A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This one is only 4 stars because it took me a while to get into. I actually wasn't with it from the beginning, but then it slowly won me over and I am looking forward to the sequel that is coming out next year. Hex by Jenny Fagan, which is about a witch that is about to be burned. I thought the ideas in here were pretty strong. It is a very quick read as well, and I would highly recommend this one if you want to read something short and powerful. How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This one is very much an Agatha Christie-like story. I very much enjoyed getting to meet the characters in this one and trying to solve the mystery along with them. Back to the Scolomans by Naomi Novik, with both A Deadly Education and The Golden Enclave, so the first and the third book in the series. I enjoyed these very much. These are about this sort of magical school with all these monsters, and the students have to try and escape from the school, and then we learn about the rest of the world and what is happening with the rest of the world and where these monsters are actually coming from. Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood, a sort of Greek mythology interpretation, and I enjoyed reading this one. It also has a love triangle and it's very much young adult. I would definitely recommend this one. Call Me By Your Name by Andrea Ackerman. This is a wonderful book. This is written terrifically well, and by all means it should be higher up my list if it weren't for a couple of scenes that really took me out of it, but that may be a personal opinion, and this is definitely a wonderful, wonderful book. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This one had a bit more to it than just a romance plot. We are talking about mental health issues in this one as well, which I liked. Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This one is very heavy. It has some really intense scenes, so be warned if you want to pick this one up. But if you are ready for that, then this is definitely one of the best thrillers that I've read all year, and I would love to read more by Karen Slaughter. The Lady of Shalott by Lord Alfred Tennyson. This is actually a very long poem in this version with a lot of beautiful drawings. I wanted to reread this one because I read it when I was studying, and I have good memories of discussing this one in class. So I am very much positively biased toward this one. I know that, but I still liked it a lot. It's a wonderful poem. More poetry with selected poems of Emily Dickinson. I annotated a bit where my favorite parts were or things that I enjoyed most. This is actually my favorite poetry of the year. Emily Dickinson is definitely my style of poetry. Next we have The Grace Here by Kim Liggett. This one is best described as a crossover between The Handmaid's Tale and Lord of the Flies, which is giving it high praise. While at the beginning of this story I wasn't very much into it. It was very rough around the edges the way this one was set up. During the story it got better and I got into it and I was rooting for the main character and I enjoyed this one. And I like the ending as well. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I already came across the second book in this series. I like this one in which I get to know the character of Emily Wilde, and it is set in a snowy landscape, which I didn't like at first, but then it got quite cozy and I enjoyed this one very much. Never Let Me Go by Kazui Ishiguro. This one is about all these children at a boarding school, and you know that something is going on, but you don't know what yet, and it is quite heartbreaking what is going on in this one. I enjoyed reading this one a lot, and I cried at the end. Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarrow's second book Curse once again. Because I totally enjoyed Fourth Wing, we are coming up to that one. But the second one wasn't giving me as much, but I still enjoyed it a lot. But I read this one right after Fourth Wing, so I was still very much into the universe. And I am just a bit scared about Onyx Storm, which is coming out, because I will have to reacquaint myself with the world again and with a lot of the characters. So we'll see if the ratings stay that high. Back to the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. We have All In, Bad Blood, and then in Bad Blood we also have the novella 12. It starts here. All three of these were better than the second book, but not as good as the first one, which is still to come. The Wishing Game by Meg Sheffer. I love reading Meg Sheffer's books. So far she has only published 2, the second one is still coming. And her books really take me back to my childhood. These are the books that I would have absolutely adored when I was a child. They would be my favorite books, I think, if I was still like 11 or 12. Meg Sheffer is really good in making you feel the magic in her stories. Then we have Verity by Colin Hoover. I am not a Colin Hoover reader. As I said before, I'm not into romantic stories. I read this one because it was highly praised as a thriller, and it did thrill me. I was surprised, I was scared at the end, so I had to give it a high rating. And the last one is The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston, which is this magical realism that you probably have heard about this apartment. And then this person can move 7 years back in time through this apartment and falls in love with a person from that time period and all that. I enjoyed this very much. I love that it is a romantic story, but with something more to it. I like this concept, especially because it was like a 7-year gap. So you can still meet this person in your own time. It wasn't like falling in love with someone 300 years ago and they are, passed away anyway in current day. So I found this one quite interesting. Moving on to the 4.5 stars. First off, we have The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So the whole series is about these teenagers who are very good at specific things. For example, noticing if someone is lying or profiling someone. And the FBI puts them together in this team, The Naturals, and they help to solve cases for the FBI. I enjoyed this series very much. It is easy to read. You get through there quickly. It was a lot of fun. The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This is a whodunit, but I love the concept of this one. You actually only get emails and text messages between people, and from there you have to derive what their relations are, how they feel about one another. And of course, at a certain moment, a murder happens, and then you can start and try to figure out who did it and why. And I love this concept. It's very much my kind of thing. And I love that you have to derive the people's character through the way they are wording their emails, what they are writing to each other, and then what they are writing to someone else. So it was a lot of fun for me, and I am actually now reading the Christmas edition of this one, The Christmas Appeal, which is a short follow-up. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I am raving about this one. I loved it so much. It is about this Hollywood star, Evelyn Hugo, and her whole life and how she has been married 7 times and why and when and everything that happened in her life. And she is being interviewed by someone to write her memoirs, and there is a storyline there too, and it is just absolutely really well done. Not to be confused by The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This one is about a person who wakes up in a body that isn't his. And he has 8 days to solve this murder that happened at this manor. And each morning he wakes up in a different body. So very entertaining. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. There was this group of friends at university, but one of them got murdered and one of them got blamed, and now it's 10 years later and they are having a reunion at the university. And from there on we are trying to figure out what actually happened, and there is lots and lots and lots of drama. The Lost Story by Max Sheffer. As I said before with The Wishing Game, I love the magic in these books. This one is about a woman who is looking for her sister that went missing 20 years ago, and she gets the help of these 2 boys who know the forest where her sister disappeared in, and then we enter this magical world. And I forgot to tell that The Wishing Game was about this island where a writer lives, someone who writes books for younger people, and he is having this contest for people to win the manuscript of his next book, which would earn a lot of money for the person who wins that contest. So yeah, love this one. Then we're back to Holly Jackson with A Good Girl's Guide to Murder as the first book in the series, and As Good as That, the third book in the series. I love these for different reasons. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is just a really good detective book, figuring out what actually happened alongside the main character was a lot of fun. And then the third book is doing something very different, something very unexpected, and I will not spoil it for you. If you are interested in reading these books, I can only recommend you to read the second one, which you will probably like a bit less than the first one as well. But definitely read the third one because it is quite different. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book has been everywhere as well, I think. It is about these two children that actually get to know each other in the hospital when they are young, and then when they grow up they meet again and they decide to make a video game together, which gets quite popular. But this one is especially good because of the relationship between the people, the way that is described, the character building. You love these people. Well, you hate them also. But it is a very surprising book that was really well written. The one by John Mars. John Mars writes these books that are a bit like Black Mirror episodes. He always has this interesting idea that he works out. And this book is about this company that can tell you which person in the whole world is your soulmate, who is the one you are actually meant to be with, which can cause surprises because maybe this person is already married, has children with someone else, or maybe this person is a man or a woman and you didn't know that you were into that particular gender. And so in this book we are following 5 storylines, so 5 people who are looking for their soulmate and what happens to them. And then the last one is the other Lisa Jewell book, None of This Is True, which I liked a lot. And this one is about a woman who does podcasts, and then there is this other woman who is kind of strange, but who was born on the same day as this woman who does the podcasts, and that is why she makes a connection. And then that first woman wants to do a podcast about the life of this second woman, but starts to discover that there is a lot going on in that woman's life, things that are pretty dark and pretty bad. We have made it to my 5-star reads. I have organized these in order of which one I think is my least favorite, and ending with my most favorite book of the year 2024. First off, we have Coraline by Neil Gaiman. It's a well-loved children's story amongst children and grown-ups alike. I think it's kind of scary. It doesn't shy away from being scary, and I loved this a lot. I read it around Halloween. And if you don't feel like reading it, there is also a very good movie adaptation from this one. Next up we have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens, which is about a girl who gets left behind by her family, and early on she only has her father, who is kind of abusive, and she has to fend for herself, and she is living in the swamp and kind of surviving in the swamp. And then she starts to meet other people, some with good intentions and some with bad intentions, and it was really heartbreaking to read at times. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a very short one, but a very impactful one. I absolutely adored her writing in this one. You should definitely read this one. It is beautiful. It is very subdued, but wonderful and terrible at the same time. Into my top 5. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This one is magnificent. It is really strange in the beginning because you are in this setting and you don't really know or understand where you are, but slowly you gain more information. And I don't want to say much else because you have to discover this book, but please give it a try. It is something very special. In 4th place we have Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. As I said before, I know that there are cliches in here, and I know that not all of it is perfect or anything like that, but when I was reading this I was having so much fun. I enjoyed it so much and I just wanted to keep on reading, even though this is quite a tome. So if you don't know, this is about a school where some people learn to ride dragons, but the dragon has to choose them. And once they are connected to the dragon, they can die if the dragon dies. So they are very much dependent on each other. A very fulfilling fantasy read. 3rd place goes to The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, because this was my biggest surprise of the year. I did not expect to like this one as much as I did. The Spell Shop is about a librarian, but the library gets burned and she takes along some of the spell books, magic books, when she is fleeing because the city has been taken over, and she's fleeing to this island. But she's not allowed to use magic, and she does so in secret in order to help the people on the island. It is cozy fantasy and I loved all the characters in this one. It was like a movie in my head. 2nd place goes to In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. This one is about 2 boys at boarding school in England at the beginning of World War I. And then one of them goes to fight in World War I and the other one misses him a lot. And then we first get letters between the two, and then that second boy also goes to war to be with his friend. It was intense, it made me cry, it made me feel like I was there, and I would highly recommend this one to anyone who wants to read either about World War One or who is not particularly interested in World War One but want to read a very compelling tale. This was also a debut novel for Alice Wynne, which is just incredible that she could write this on her first go. And now finally for my favorite book of this year, it is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is about the family of William Shakespeare, but William Shakespeare is never named and he is not the main character in this book, although he is important. But it's about his wife and his children and what happens to them and the way they are living. And Maggie O'Farrell's writing in this one is absolutely stunning. I was sold. I had to read this one through from beginning to end. It was wonderful to read. It was intense to read. It was emotional to read. And I wish I could make everyone read this. I am recommending it to family and friends all the time. But Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell is my favorite book that I read in 2024. And with that, I'm at the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way to the end, please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already. It means a lot to me, and I hope to see you soon in 2025. Bye!